Hey everyone, Cinco de Mayo. Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. Today I'm talking with Keith Brewer about, well, I'm going to let him tell everybody what it's about, but it's a discipline that I have been wanting to get more and more involved in and is very fascinating to me. Take it away, Keith.
Okay, thank you for having me today. I'm really super happy to be here. Um, my name is Keith. I started doing an art called Qigong from China when I was about 6 years old because doctors in this country had told me three orthopedic surgeons in a row had told me that I would be paralyzed by the time I was 13 due to spinal issues. And I managed to find Qigong and Chinese medicine and Qigong practice will almost never tell you something is a finite paralyzed thing. There's always a way out. And I practice Qigong um, nightly, every night since I was 6 years old. Just obviously, I'm not paralyzed. I mean, you can't see me dancing around on a camera today, but I'm far from paralyzed. My wife describes me as a martial arts expert. I've taught martial arts all my life. I teach Qigong, I teach Tai Chi, which we'll get into Tai Chi. We call it Tai Chi in this country. I might mention later why we shouldn't, but um, I've practiced and taught all of those all my life. I spent quite a few years having to actually literally fight my way to and from school. So I learned all the fighting arts from China, and I learned that I'm very much in tune with them and very adept at them. So now I teach self defense rather than having to continue that life where I had to fight in the streets.
These disciplines that, the Westerners find, I'm going to call myself a Westerner for goodness sake. The Westerners find so fascinating, and they send their kids to get different belts, and the women go and the men go to twist themselves into all these positions, and they call it yoga. There's Tai Chi, right? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, that's
Tai
very good.
Chi, Qigong, and then there's yoga, and these are all viable disciplines. I mean, they hold a place in history. They have a culture. There's a reason they're here. But do we really know what they are? What are the differences? What are they?
In many cases, in my opinion, and from what I've learned, we don't know what they really are. They've all been softened before they left their original countries, just to present the West with a different version of them. For instance, yoga in the West, in many now some places you can find it being taught authentic. So I don't want to say this is a blanket term, but in many cases, yoga in the West has been turned into a physical exercise, and you can even look at the common clothing for these arts and see how they're presented. Yoga is dressed in very tight, physique showing clothing because it's focused on the physique and it's focused on strength and flexibility and no internal health issues. Originally, yoga and Qigong were very close to being the same thing, just coming from two different cultures. And they were both focused on internal development and internal higher spiritual understanding and development of that sense. Um, but yoga has been changed in the West, mostly focused on the physical aspect. Qigong has been changed in the West. So in a lot of cases, and now I went to great lengths to learn traditional and actual Qigong, which I call it. But a lot of times Qigong practitioners and instructors looking for something that's just beautiful. And that's how they describe it. Well, it's beautiful. And I've asked instructors before, like, well, what does it do for the practitioner? And they just look at me and say, well, it's beautiful. And I'm like, oh, okay.
It's
This is
esoteric.
this to me is kind of terrible because we don't really understand the true power that Qigong holds. Now, Qigong literally kept me from being paralyzed. I've worked with people. I've gotten an asthma patient off of his inhaler. He doesn't need to use an inhaler anymore. I literally worked 2 years ago with a woman that had stage 3 cervical cancer, and her doctors cannot find those tumors anymore. So, Qigong practiced properly and correctly can do some amazing health things. I've seen it help two women that Western science said would never have children. They've both got children now. And so it's all true power is in the origins of it, but we aren't. I mean, I don't want to say all the wrong things, but China didn't really want to water down their arts. They were very hesitant to release them to the outside world. So many of these things were softened in China before they ever came over here. And that happened a lot with the yoga from India. I know a yoga instructor that was teaching for a long time, and then she realized that yoga is not what it used to be. And she went to India to learn her yoga. So she's got a whole different brand of yoga. That's why I know that some people actually are teaching it authentic here. And but a lot of people aren't, and a lot of people aren't teaching qigong properly. And we didn't learn. I mean, the fact that we call this art tai chi is a sign of the fact that we didn't learn that one right either, because that's not the right name for it. I mean, we cultivate qi in the practice of tai chi, but tai chi literally isn't anything. So if you're learning tai chi, chances are you've learned a softened version of it that doesn't really have the true depths of what it used to have.
These were, I'll use the term religion because I don't know what else to call it, but these were high disciplines in a culture so different than ours, in a family system so different from ours, in a country so different from ours, that when it came over, they had to soften it down.
Well, they didn't. Yes, there's a lot of truth to that. They didn't want to release their true arts. Plus, they understood that other cultures didn't understand the true depth of commitment that it takes to learn these arts, and they didn't want to see them softened by someone else. And I'm going to change it from a religion to a philosophy.
Okay, sure.
Because there a lot of times in early classes when I was teaching it, people will ask me, "Is this a religion?" And I'm like, "It's not a religion. It's a philosophy that works within the context of any religion that you want to practice."
Right,
So it will actually, true practice of qigong or taiji will bring you to a better awareness of where you stand in your own religion.
right,
But
right.
it's not a religion in itself.
In a
And
sense, right. It wasn't, it had nothing to do with Buddha or Hindi, or I should say Hindu. Hindi's the language, in any
yeah,
case. It had nothing to do with that religious, but it was part and parcel of the philosophy that was also a, a nature of the religion, but it is not a religion.
right, exactly. I mean, people practiced it religiously. I mean, there's that, and some people have taken these practices to a religious devotion in the West. Okay, and but that's another part of we didn't really understand the commitment, the that it takes, the true art behind it, and China just really wanted to keep it as pure as they could. So they secretly practiced that because right after they softened it and released it to the West, they also stopped teaching it in most places properly there because they saw a lot of Westerners coming over there wanting to learn in 10 minutes. That's just not how it works. I mean, I've been studying since I was 6, and I still think I've got a lot to learn.
Mhm.
So I'll be studying these arts and practicing them and teaching them as long as I live. So there's no end to, there's not going to be a come a day where I say, okay, I know this. There's going to come a day where I say, I know a little more, and I can see another level and another level and another level. So that's where these arts originally were. And you mentioned the family version of a lot of these arts. They even today, when you refer to them, what style of Taiji do you do? Yang family, or Chen family, because for a long time, if you were not born into that family, you did not learn that art.
Mhm.
So that's just it was religiously again that word held tight as far as no, you're not in the Chen family, you do not learn Chen Taiji.
Right.
But today it's been opened up a little bit. Again, they're not necessarily teaching the deeper levels to what they consider non-Chinese, but there's ways of getting there. If you show the proper respect to a Chinese person, and you find the right Chinese person, and they conclude from talking to you that you'll give it the proper devotion, they don't want the arts to die. They just want them to stay pure as they continue.
These are um, these are important cultural elements of different peoples that we turn into trends,
Yes,
and it's in one way, in one way, it's paying homage to them, and the other way, it's exploiting them.
exactly.
And the concept of yoga, I guess it was pretty bohemian before the Beatles. But if it had not been for the Beatles going to India and bringing it back, there would not have been that 70s.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. John Lennon was instrumental in spreading yoga to the West. That's absolutely true. And that's part of the reason why we haven't had a surgence of Taiji or Qigong, because no celebrity has gone to China to learn it and spread it to the West yet. So there's a lot of people that they either don't know what Qigong is, they don't even know how to pronounce it a lot of times. I've heard Qigong, Qigong, and all kinds of versions of that. And it's like, this is just because we don't have a large knowledge base in this country yet of what these arts are. And a
mhm.
lot of it is because yoga had the Beatles. We don't have the Beatles. So I'm one tiny little voice trying to spread more awareness of what these arts are.
When I wanted, I still do. When I think that I'd like to get into stretching and, getting into better physical shape without impact, I initially went to yoga, and being in a small yoga class, even though it was 10 or 15 people with one instructor, I immediately realized I can't do this. I need at least one on one, if not one on five, not one on 15. I can't do this. And I thought to myself that I would, find something else to do. And I was looking up and I thought of Tai Chi. I think I thought of Tai Chi because there's a movie with with an actor, he's doing the wonderful, movements.
Right.
Robert De Niro, I
Okay.
believe. Robert De Niro. Maybe it was whatever. Or maybe it was Jack Nicholson. In any case, with the wonderful mo. And I thought, oh, that's so graceful. I'd like to do that. So we get pulled into it without realizing that Tai Chi is actually a little bit more physical than we think. Qigong is, like you said, a little closer to yoga, but really, what are the differences? What are the real differences?
Okay. In the early days and the way I still teach it, Taiji is a martial art. And it's very beautiful for self-defense because it uses almost none of your strength to fend off an attacker. It's always working with using their energies and their attack against them. So it takes almost nothing. Now, I always said that when I fought, I'm the laziest fighter in the world. I don't want to put out a lot of effort. I want to use your energies against you. So when I had to defend myself in the streets all those years, turns out I was using the principles of Taiji before I even knew that art, because I was taking an energy that comes in and redirecting it somewhere else. And it takes almost nothing. I'm a small person. I'm 5'5" at best on my good days. And all the people that were attacking me in the street were much bigger than me. I knew right up front that I could not fight force with force, or I would just get destroyed. So I think the early practice from Qigong before I had to do that helped me adapt to what I had to do in the streets to stay, you know, to keep going back and forth to school and make it to school and make it home and make it back to school the next day.
Is
So
Qigong also a martial art?
no, Qigong is strictly a healing art. It's a meditation. Okay, part of the thing, now this is going to get us into the differences in meditations. A lot of times when you tell people in the West the word meditation, they envision someone sitting quietly staring at a wall with soft music playing in the background, little finger symbols or whatever. And
Don't forget the incense burning.
Oh, you can't forget the incense burning. But no, the thing that I've learned, see, Qigong is a standing meditation more than a seated meditation. And one of the things I've learned, having gone through all of this medical program that I've gone through, which I've almost finished with an East-West medical program. In 14 weeks, I'll have a doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. But it was from an East-West medical college, so we had to learn both sides of it. We're in a Western world, so I need to understand Western medicine to know what anybody coming in has gone through or what medications they're on and all of that, so I don't adversely affect that. But one of the things I've learned going through that medical program is prolonged sitting. They're actually calling prolonged sitting the new smoking. It's that unhealthy for you. It shuts off.
My eyebrows just like jumped off my face.
Yes, it's that unhealthy for you. When you ask someone what are the common side effects from learning meditation, they call numbness, tingling, cramping in the lower body. When you look at the
I have all of those.
right, when you look at the medical lists of what are the side effects from chronic lower body lowered circulation, it's cramping, numbness, tingling in the lower body. It's the same exact list. So all of that chronic decreased circulation in the lower body leads to deep vein thrombosis, it leads to ulcers, it leads to all kinds of adverse health issues. So I can't help wondering why everyone is promoting an exercise where you're supposed to ignore all those signs and just sit there. You're causing possibilities of long-term really bad health issues that are difficult to come back from. And Qigong offers a standing meditation where the basic stance that you learn in the very beginning with the proper breathing is said to open up. In Chinese medicine, we talk about 12 primary meridians, and they're just channels of energy that flow through your body and bring energy, blood, and nutrients to and through all the organ systems. Now, seated meditation is going to decrease all of that circulation in your lower body. That's why you have all those side effects. Qigong actually is, there's one position that the Chinese in the old days used to say is the only position that we can put our bodies in that opens up the flow for all 12 of those meridians all through the whole body. So I'm a very strong advocate of the fact that meditation is great. We all should be doing meditation. There's no doubt, but we need to be shifting from the seated meditation into a standing meditation, because that will increase all the flow through our body instead of decreasing it, and increasing all that flow of circulation of energy, blood, nutrients is going to just give us better health rather than setting ourselves up for some real problems.
I like to think that when I walk the dogs, I'm meditating. So
Oh,
maybe I am.
I believe you are. There's a lot of things. If it's relaxing and you're moving your body, no, that's another thing. Movement is life. All right. So sitting is not movement. And it's really unhealthy. Your brain has a circuit hardwired in that you're not going to change, that it registers when you've been sitting for 20 minutes and it decreases circulation to the lower body. So for a long time, my wife was doing academic editing, and she was on her computer like 65, 70 hours a week. But she had a timer on her computer that was set to 19 minutes. So at 19 minutes, the timer would go off. She would get up and move around, resets that brain circuit. So if you have a seated job and you have to sit there for a long time, get one of those timers, download it. They're free. Set it up on your computer, set it for 19 minutes, and then just get up for like 30 seconds, a minute, move around. And
My
it resets that.
brain's my brain's hot wire. It's just it's kind of funny that you should say that. Oftentimes, at least 4 times a day, I will literally jump up out of my chair, start walking around, and then I'll say to myself, "Why did I get up? I have nothing to do. I didn't say to myself, you have to get up and go into the kitchen. I suddenly found myself in the kitchen.
Right, because
Is
your
my
brain,
body saying, will you please get up?
yes, your brain is actually tuned into the fact that you need to move. And getting back to walking your dog, There are so many things that are actually a meditation. If you're moving and it's relaxing for you and you're breathing smoothly, now you should be doing deep breathing, but we won't get into that right now. But if you're relaxed and you're moving, this is a meditation. I mean, I've even told people that if you have a heavy bag and you kick it for a half hour and you're in good form and you're doing good breathing, that's a meditation. So there are all kinds of things that can be considered meditations. And not all of us are tuned into the same type of meditation. Even before I knew the adverse effects of prolonged sitting, I'm not one to sit and stare at a wall. I needed a meditation like Qigong, where some of it is it just standing in one place. That's difficult enough. I like things that move. So movement is life, and I like to move. So it was difficult. The first couple of times I sat and tried those meditations, I'm like, oh no, this is just not going to work. I can't do this. And they would say, no, 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 just sit there and it'll come. And I'm like, I don't want to. I feel like wrong. So plus I do have those spinal issues that they called out in my early childhood that
It just becomes uncomfortable.
it
I
is.
find sitting with my legs crossed on the floor between my back and my initially my foot's going to fall asleep. I need to get up.
Oh, I have difficulty just sitting there for 2 minutes. I can't do it. So Qigong offers me the avenue of it is a meditation. And it is very healing because it does open all those 12 meridians. Now, walking like you're walking the dog is very close to what that standing posture is, only you're moving.
Hmm.
So that's going to open up all those 12 primary meridians for good chi flow or good energy flow. And it's a very good meditation.
I I look at it as my a lot of folks around me go to the gym. Well, I take the dogs out and I'm going to the gym. I'm just
Yeah.
walking around for 40 minutes, sometimes an hour. I come back. I have no idea what I thought. I don't listen to music. I don't talk on the phone. I just walk. I
Yeah.
make a point. I'm completely disconnected. I'm walking with the dogs.
And interesting you say the word disconnected, because if you do proper Qigong practice, one of the mental states you're looking for is to be completely disconnected. You don't want to have any thoughts. Now, people will tell you when you're meditating or learning meditation, just empty your mind. And I'm literally going to say that's difficult to do. Your mind's probably never going to be empty, but you can have it calmed and ordered and not tasking you with anything. And a proper meditation will teach you to do that. And so if you can go for 40 minutes and come back and think, well, I don't even know what I thought about, that's an excellent meditation.
I let my mind jump, just like this, that, the other, whatever. No, I don't. I don't force myself to say, "Oh, we need to solve a problem right now. Here's the problem. I think it through." If it happens, it happens.
It
But I don't
happens.
force anything.
Right. And that's the true sign of the mental state of a good meditation. You'll have thoughts come through. Yeah, I mean, my statement is empty your mind, that's not going to happen. Right? Our minds are empty when we're dead.
Yeah,
But
that'll happen soon enough. Thank you very much.
well, I'd like to prolong that as much as possible.
Yes.
That's another part. Longevity in China in the old days, they had people living to 500, 600 years old.
Can I do that?
I don't see why
I
not.
just don't know where I would be in 500 years because
Well,
this world's kind of crazy.
yeah, but I think the world will sort itself out in time if we just hang
If
around.
we were all here and we lived to 500, all of that rich family culture experience would remain. We wouldn't forget it.
Exactly. No, and honestly, not everybody is going to be in tune with I want to live 500 years. I want to live 600 years. So
Mm.
the people that do, you'll have a good connection with. I personally say a lot of this mess that's going on right now, the world moves in cycles, right?
Hmm.
This will cycle back out.
Hmm.
The world will become a beautiful place again, and I want to be here when that happens.
Hmm.
So there is no reason. Part of the reason is okay, this gets into something else. One of the things we're told when we're little is there's only two things that are certain in life.
Taxes and death.
Exactly. And when I heard that, I thought, well, that can't be right. And
It's disappointing to say the least.
yeah, disappointing to say the least. And I've come to the conclusion that one of the reasons, okay, there's a concept that we all heard about, but I don't think a lot of us really put a lot of time into thinking about what it really means. And it's called mind over matter. And one of the ways it applies is if you keep telling yourself you have to die, guess what? You have to die.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a concept we know of called reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Because we don't really have to die.
Mm-hmm.
But we keep forcing ourselves into that cycle by going through our entire lives saying we have to die.
Mm-hmm.
Mind over matter. You're going to go through that. But then you're coming back to life to try and figure this out again. I don't want to get too religious with this, but the Gutenberg Bible, back before we had the King James Bible, had more books in it than what the King James Bible has. And they were removed for one reason or another by the people that put together the King James Bible.
Mm-hmm.
One of those books was all about how God didn't create death. Man created death for profit.
Hmm.
Now, when I mentioned this to a Catholic priest, he said, "Oh, the church is aware of that." And I said, "Wait, you're aware of that, but you still teach without talking about that."
Well, it's control.
So it is control. And they're making the organized religion and organized churches are making a huge amount of money on death. They're the ones that handle burials. They're the ones that handle funeral services. The Catholic Church is the organization that created purgatory. And I've witnessed them telling people, "Oh, your uncle is stuck in purgatory. For $2,000, we can pray him through." And then after a little bit of time, they came back to this family and said, "Well, he's almost through, but we need another $3,000."
Mm-hmm.
They're making a huge amount of money on this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back into scriptures prior to the King James Bible, that entire book was all about how God did not create death. Man did. And he created it for profit.
Part of the problem with a lot of religions, or the initial fights between or within the sects, were that some people believed uh, religion is in my home. My home is the sanctuary. I am the sanctuary. This home is the sanctuary. And then there were others that said, no, no, you must come to church. You
Right.
must pay, you must pay. Um, and, I mean, every religion has had that rip them apart
Oh, yes,
and destroy
absolutely.
the essence of that relationship that every human being can have personally themselves with the powers that be.
Yes. Now, I didn't know we were going to get into this religious of a talk here,
But here we are.
but here we are. Um, I will also mention that I was raised by my dad to be a minister. He really, really, really wanted me to be a minister. And he was very disappointed in the fact that by the time I'd read the Bible 3 times and then read other scriptures that were taken out of it, I told him, "I'm not doing this. This is all about power and subjugation, and I won't have a part of that." When you look at the words that Jesus supposedly said, he said, "Anytime 2 or more people gather in my name, that's church." So yes, you can be in your own home. And I believe that 2 or more people means physical people or you talking to the Spirit. Because
Exactly.
the Bible also says if you learn to listen for the voice of the Spirit, it will talk to you.
We'll talk to
Now, it may not speak audibly in English.
you.
You may have to look for a different form of communication. This is how I actually learned Qigong as a child. Since we're here, I'll just go into this. I didn't have a physical teacher. When they told me I was going to be paralyzed by the time I was 13, I waited until the family went to bed and I went out on the farm at night. And I already knew that the Bible said if you learn to listen for the voice of the Spirit, it'll talk to you. And the Bible also talks about a concept of becoming an empty vessel, which I only barely understood at that time, but I knew that meant I couldn't have any thoughts going on in my head. I just had to empty myself and keep myself quiet. So I went out to a clearing in the woods and I looked at the sky and I said, if you're what, in my mind, I said, if you're what they've told me you are, you'll help. And then I kept myself quiet and I waited and waited and waited and just breathed. And then eventually I started noticing that the trees only moved when the wind blows. So I started mimicking the tree movements with the wind. Then at some point, I felt compelled to move in specific ways. And it turns out that I was taught two very specific Qigong practices that are legitimate Qigong practices, and they're all about spinal flexibility and strength. So, did the spirit talk to me? I believe it did. And I've studied that level and all Qigong as long as I've been alive so far.
Mhm.
So I believe that all of us can learn to tune in to that voice, but it didn't speak audibly in English, move your body like this. It just started with me becoming aware of trees moving when the wind blows. Now, the wind blowing equates to our breath when you turn it into Qigong, because that's internal wind. And the body moves with the breath. So that's getting into a little bit of Qigong practice. You don't just move your arms around and legs, it's all tuned to your breath.
Mhm.
And when you're doing this practice, whether it's Tai Chi, now Tai Chi is, when you talk about Yang family Tai Chi, is a martial art, but it's built on the principles of Qigong. So if you do it properly, you will get some healing benefits, but there's 5 levels of learning Tai Chi, and not until you get to the 4th and 5th level can you achieve those healing benefits.
Mhm.
Qigong, you can learn from the first or second session, you can start getting some healing benefits. I was working with one group and I was teaching them basic standing meditation and the breathing. And one of the guys there said at one point he heard a loud pop in his back, and his chronic sciatic pain, which he'd had for over 20 years and nobody could fix, was just gone.
Well, it sort of makes sense, because a lot of the issues Westerners have is related to, I'm just going to call it stress of something. So it may be external, but it may be internal stress.
Oh,
So we may not be standing properly. We may be in fights with people. There may be a lot of things that are going on. And as you calm yourself down, if you're instructed, or if perhaps you listen, and if you calm yourself down, you can bring yourself to a point where um, the stress is released. And I've experienced that.
absolutely. I
And
mean,
I force that on myself when I can't sleep at night and I'm rehashing something, whatever. And I say to myself, okay, this is ridiculous. Obviously, I'm not going to solve the problem because whatever it is, or I know specifically what it is, it happened. What am I going to do? I'm going to rehash it all night long. I'm going to play it, a movie, a horror movie all night long. I'm like, you know what? Just breathe and start counting. And I do the count in and out, in and out. And
right.
suddenly I'm asleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a couple really wonderful things there. First of all, stress. I want to touch on that.
Mm.
If you look at the American Medical Association and the Mayo Clinic, they're listing stress as the cause of 92% of why we're going to see a doctor. And that 92% is actually climbing higher right now. But just over 90% of the reasons we're going to see a doctor are inherently related to stress.
Mhm.
And one of the easiest ways now, just counting your breath is a meditation. And when I'm first teaching people how to do meditations, I encourage them to count the breath because it does two things. It kind of tunes out other thoughts and it focuses you on your breath. And we need to focus on our breath. We need to focus on good, slow, deep breathing because that does in itself release stress. And we're living in a world where there's potential stresses every hour of every day. I mean, if you look at headlines, wow, how is that not stressful? When you see where the world is at and where it's going, and if you can predict where things are going, it could be very stressful.
Mhm.
But like what you were just saying about replaying a horror movie in your mind at night, we can't help all these things. All we can do is, my wife and I talk all the time about this may be a very potentially stressful world, but all we can do is control our own little life bubble. And all you can do is make your little life bubble as happy and relaxed as possible. and control the things that you can control, and not, you can be aware of what's going on in the world, but you have to learn how to not internalize it.
Right. Also, not participate in it negatively or positively.
Yeah. No.
So, if you're finding that something is particularly stressful, if you're continually talking about it with someone else, it's not going to, first of all, it's not going to alleviate the situation.
No.
And now you've got two people that are upset.
Exactly. And now
And
you've just
that's
continued,
infectious.
right? You continue the stress, and this is one of the things obviously you're fully aware of. We just can't participate in.
Can't participate. I used to
Uh,
think I would interpret that as the serpent in the Bible. Like that's the venom. If you let that snake bite you, you're infected now. And you've got the venom inside of you. And suddenly everything is vitriol. And what is the point in that? If there's something that you can do positively, if you can add a value to something, go do that instead. If
yes.
if you can't, because for whatever reason, then um, I would suggest that you probably can. You just need to come to terms with your life, a sacrifice, and taking negatives and turning them into positives. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, and you're
There's
going
a
to
lot
have
of
to really
negatives.
actually want it. It's not going to, like you said, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's not going to accidentally happen to you either. You're going to have to take a proactive role in this, and just decide that you're not going to participate in that stuff anymore. Excuse me. Now, I have to reference my dad was very frustrated and angry when he was alive. And there is power in that.
Oh yeah.
So he had a problem letting go of it because that gave him a sense of power. I didn't want to continue in those footsteps, so to speak.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of power in compassion. There's a lot of power in helping someone else in get over some issues, physical or psychological they may have. And I prefer to play in that arena. I like helping people, and I like seeing people get what I'm saying, and be able to take it into their own lives and make a better life.
Mhm.
Most of the clients I work with are not ongoing clients. What I'm teaching is practices.
Right.
Once you
Well, see,
understand,
that's another problem with Western religion is that they don't want to necessarily solve the problem. They want to prolong it because once they solve it, you're not coming back.
exactly. Oh, I'm religious.
Pharmaceutical industry. I just defined the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, you did. And actually, Western medicine was not designed to fix any ailment. It was designed to keep us alive despite the fact that we're sick. And they're hand in hand with the pharmaceutical industry. You know, this Western doctors a lot of times don't do their own research. They count on drug salesmen to tell them what's the newest, latest, greatest thing. And they cite the fact that we don't have time to do our own research, so we listen to them. So this is basically drug peddlers coming in telling doctors what they need to prescribe, and they literally do the same thing a heroin dealer will do, and they give free samples and tell these doctors, hand these out to your patients, free samples, and then when they want more, then we got them hooked. All right, well, Chinese medicine, we don't do that. All right, any herbal formulas I give you are not addictive. They're all natural ingredients. They I mean, one of the biggest things we're taught in school is cause no harm. And so if our
That's part of the Hippocratic Oath, isn't it?
yeah, it's supposed to be. Um, Western science does not want us to call ourselves doctors, even if I have a doctorate in 14 weeks. I'm not really allowed to go out and say I'm a doctor. Western medicine has laws. So I have to say, I'm Keith. I have a doctorate in acupuncture, blah, blah, blah. I can't call myself Dr. Keith, which I probably will anyways. But um, because there's another thing that says if you have a PhD, you can call yourself a doctor. So,
Right. There you
so
go.
that's where I'm going to be at. Um, I don't know what else we were
We were
gonna.
talking about sort of health, and it's another question that I was going to talk about is, you know, Western and Eastern aside, really, how do we maximize health? How do we end up living till we're 600 years old?
Okay, first of all, we have to understand that we've been programmed to believe 80 years old is old and we're going to die.
Mhm.
And you have to allow yourself to be reprogrammed to the fact that there should be no limit to life.
Mhm.
Aware of the fact that that book from the Gutenberg Bible was removed so we would not hear the fact that God did not create death. We would hear only that we have to die. So you have to just allow yourself to be open to being able to live as long as you want. And then beyond that, we're living in a tricky society in the fact that a lot of foods in the market are the healthy choice, and they're just not. So we have to be willing to educate ourselves on what true nutrition is. And that can be done. There's plenty of people, nutrition experts out there trying to decipher that. You can go online and Google the fact that, what nutrients do I need? How much fat do I need? How many carbs do I need? How much protein do I need per day? How many calories do I need per day? Because that's a big thing that's being messed with these days. The average female adult only needs 2,000 calories a day.
Mhm. Even
And
for me, and I keep a journal, I keep a food journal, and 2000 is too much for me.
no, I know the average is based on a large frame, and
Somewhere between 1200 and 1700 for me.
exactly, and that's you said another important thing. Keeping a food journal is really important because our brains are weird in the fact that if we don't write things down, we kind of forget what we ate,
Mhm.
and it's really easy to eat things without thinking about it, especially if you're sitting at a computer or sitting anywhere for a long time. Snacking comes into play.
Mhm.
And you eat things and you just don't register it. You drink things that have high caloric count, and your body really doesn't register the nutrition from a beverage.
Mhm.
So you can drink, like I used to drink protein shakes, but a protein shake is like 300, 400 calories. Body's
Mhm.
not going to even register that I did that. So
Right.
I can drink a protein shake and be instantly hungry. So you have to be aware of all of that stuff. Keeping a food journal is an important thing. One of the most important things before we run out of time, I think, is getting proper meditation and finding something that you feel is a meditation and it works as a meditation for you. And like we were talking about earlier, something that allows you 30 to 40 minutes a day, twice a day, if you can, where your brain just disconnects. We have our cell phones handy all the time, right?
Mhm.
I have my iPad very close at hand. I mean, I'm like a lot of people, I'm very seldom very far away from them because people contact me. I want to respond. I don't want to leave them hanging. But there are times where I'm going to do my meditation where those are not in the room and they're muted so I don't hear them. And we need to disconnect because many of us are just never disconnected. And that we've all heard of, I think, at this point, the fight or flight response. All of the overstimulation we get in the world from our devices, from all the headlines, from all of things, even neighbors' dogs barking, these things keep us in that flight mode.
Mm.
Now, there's a lot of people that feel like they're doing everything they can to lose weight and they can't lose weight. Large part of it in some cases is the fact that they're constantly in flight mode. Flight mode diverts energies from the digestive system and it puts them at your extremities and your eyes dilating and your ears being more aware and you're ready to run. That's, originally because we had to run away from tigers and things that wanted to
Right.
eat
And if you're
us.
not running, it's like a waste of energy.
It is, but it's diverting it from things that we need it to do.
Right.
So the meditation in itself, just on one level, disconnects you and allows that other the rest and relax situation to happen, and
Mhm.
really needs to happen. And the more you get into it, now I was personally in the beginning a person that I always had to do something. I always had to be active. I had to be moving, and I didn't think I could adapt to any type of meditation. So in the early days of Qigong, the original basic posture and breathing, the masters used to say we should all do it for an hour a day. And I thought, there's no way I could stand for an hour a day, but it ends up quickly feeling so good that I've stood for well over an hour and breathing many times, because it just, you start doing it and you say, okay, like what I tell people in classes, don't try for an hour a day. That's a long time. 5 minutes. Just try 5 minutes a day. And once you do 5 minutes a day on a regular basis, there's going to be days where you think, wow, I just did 40 minutes and it felt like five.
Mm.
And then you do an hour and a half and you think, wow, that just felt like a few minutes. Because our systems innately do want to disconnect. We just have to allow ourselves to let that happen.
Mm-hmm. It's something that just went in my head, and maybe I'm trying to pat myself on the back, but a lot of people like to go places and do things, and I'm like, can I just like do nothing and go nowhere? And I think to myself that going and doing, it's a lot of input. It's like, seeing, doing, talking, tasting. I mean, if you're going to go somewhere and do something, you're not going to go to a hotel, sit in a room and do nothing. You're going to go out, you're going to be eating, you're going to, and I like to think of myself, I need to tune out and I need to actually experience whatever it is inside out, not outside in. And it's a
Yeah.
very odd concept.
Well,
Did I
not
make it up in my head or what?
no, not really. I mean, if you don't, I mean, I'm going to put it in slightly different terms. If you don't know yourself, how can you know others?
Mm.
All right. And how can you know and experience if you don't know yourself first? There's another biblical concept. I mean, this ties into where they say, love your neighbor as you do yourself, right?
If you hate
How,
yourself, hello.
but if you haven't learned how to truly love yourself, you can't love anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't experienced that quiet inner peace radiating out, how can you experience anything outward coming in?
Mm-hmm.
It's all, and I think you're very in tune with what you need to do. I don't have a problem with going out and doing things as long as I have a good balance of being quiet. Because
Right.
there's a yin yang balance in Chinese theories and philosophies that's always a part of life. You cannot have life without that balance. It's dynamic energy moving around. Yin's chasing yang, yang's chasing yin. So if you pull out any one of those things and just have yang, you're not alive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pull out the yang and just have yin, you're not alive
Not
anymore.
alive anymore.
You have,
I'm.
but we all need a different level of those balances.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us may need more yin time, which would be quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
And then every once in a while, get out and interact with friends or the world, or just go walk your dog or something,
Mm-hmm.
and others, I think we're overstimulated in this society.
Yeah. I think I'm, um, for many reasons, COVID being one of them, but for many reasons, I went into the understimulated part of my life where I became very internalized, right? And I thought of ways to exercise, and not, I don't mean that in the 1 2 3 4, I mean to exercise internally everything that I can to make sense out of it, so that when I come out of this phase, I've learned something, and I've just, I don't want to be underneath a rock, but there's something going on that I need to uh, understand about me and it. So when I come out, I can really get involved in the next phase.
Yeah, and I think that was very healthy. And it was a horrible thing that happened with the COVID virus, but I think there are some good things that came out of it. And what you just said is one of them. I don't think you're alone in the fact that some people turned internal and started developing themselves because they don't want to live under a rock either. But it was a perfect chance for some of us to develop internal energies and awarenesses and balance, just so that when we go back out into the world, we can interact in a better way.
Mhm.
So,
I also think that something that you said triggered me. I think that we know when we're sick, but we haven't been taught to listen to that, and that's another internal thing. Like you said, when you went outside, you realized that the wind was moving the trees, and it was the breath, and it was we know when we're sick, but
yeah.
we just don't listen to that wind and
No,
trees.
we've been taught to listen to doctors tell us when we're sick. And it's interesting that you said that, because one of my clinic shifts this term, in my final term at school, is at a clinic that's all designed. It's an outside clinic away from the school. It's in town. And its philosophy is our clients drive their treatments. Our clients know their own bodies better than we do. Our clients should be able to tell us what's wrong, and we just help them to get better. Now, Chinese medicine is always, one of the things that's been drilled into our heads in school is the fact that we as doctors or as healthcare practitioners are not the people healing these people. People are healing themselves. We're just there to facilitate and help that to happen. So when I'm giving herbs or when I'm doing needles, I'm not the person doing this healing. I'm sending you signals to where you can heal yourself.
Mhm.
And that's the original Chinese medicine was Qigong. That's where the origin started. That's why I found out I started. So I'm very much in line with how it all started and how it all began. And I came full circle to where now I've got that doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. But I'm still a believer in the fact that if you take control of your healing and understand that you're the one healing yourself anyways, it's much more powerful than giving that power to me and expecting me to heal you.
Right, exactly. But a lot of people go to the doctor and they expect the doctor to provide the results. But the
That's
doctor's not providing the results. The doctor is opening the door so that,
exactly
for you to walk through it.
right. I mean, I tend to look at it as, no matter who's coming into my, first of all, I hate the word patients. I don't use it. They're clients because we work together. And I also don't like the word patient because it insinuates that you're sick. And my attitude is, you're not really sick. You've just forgotten that you're healthy. And I'm here to help remind you that you're healthy and you're strong. So I very much, and that's very much an ancient Chinese thought. I've been told by many people that um, I follow the ancient ways,
Mhm.
and I think ancient ways equate to modern day life.
There was a reason why there were wise men and women, sages, chiefs, whatever you want to call them. They were philosophers. They were thinkers. They were listeners. They had a particular person to person talent that most other people didn't have. You know, um, somebody was a butcher, and then there was, the town sage. Um, and we tend to make light and say, oh, you've got that feeling again. Well, maybe, maybe you just need to go to the bathroom. But the truth is, we all know the answers. We
Yes,
all know the answers to the questions. Every single one of us. We don't need somebody else to tell us. We just need to learn how to listen to ourselves and to learn to trust. It's something, maybe I tend to be too much of a libertarian in that sense, politically, but also philosophically. I do believe that if we control ourselves, if we discipline ourselves, we solve the world's problems.
absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. And we have to, I've always told people in my classes that we're all way more intuitive than we give ourselves credit for.
Mhm.
And just like you said, I tell people we have those thoughts and impulses, but we dismiss them.
Mhm.
And we need to learn how to stop dismissing them and tune more into what ourselves are telling us, because we do know all the answers. I hate to bring this all the way back to religion again, but kind of feels like I need to, because even in the beginning, if you look at all the teachings when Jesus was around, he kept saying, they kept exalting him as the one and only. He kept saying, I'm not. I'm nothing more than you are. I'm you, you're me, whatever. And if you look at the very early scriptures, they say that God created man in its own image, which means we were physical representations of that God. And we
Which
have,
means we can all obtain godhood.
absolutely, but people didn't want that. If you also look at all the stories of Jesus, you'll find out that it was the people of the day that demanded his death.
Right.
And the law enforcement at the time tried to go way out of their ways to let him be released, and the people insisted, no, release that criminal, that murderer, and kill that guy. And it was all based on the fact that he was telling them things they didn't want to hear. And if they killed him, they can rewrite his words in what they want. And that's what we've been taught for like thousands of years, not what he actually said, even though it's still there if you look for it.
And he wasn't the only one. I mean,
No, I mean,
those words were shared.
oh yes, no, that's not an exclusive story.
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
the one we reference a lot in the West because it's the one we all know the best.
Right.
But no, not at all an exclusive story.
Not an exclusive story.
It's a story that's been told and told and told.
That's right.
But this one is unique in the fact that we demanded his death for that. And, that to me is a key point in that whole story, is why did we demand his death? I think that needs to be explored. And the only answer is because he wouldn't stop saying, I'm you, you are me. We're all the same thing. You could be doing the thing. Again, some of the books from the Gutenberg Bible that were removed talked about he wasn't the only one doing those miracles back then.
Right.
He was teaching his disciples. That was the point of having disciples. He was teaching them to go out into the world and replicate bread and fish and feed people and heal people through touch.
Very dangerous.
Yes.
Very dangerous. Because now you don't need government.
Exactly. But it wasn't the government that killed him. It was the people.
And the truth is that even if we all control ourselves, if we all attempt to be the healthiest and don't listen to what other people tell us will make us healthy, we know, that a big fat juicy steak with lots of fat on it and whatever, you look at yourself and you say, a small piece of meat would be fine, but that whole thing with the fat on it is probably not a good thing. We know that.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I was going to talk about earlier that you brought back up. With the caloric count and the average, we can only take so many calories a day. Right. If you take more than you can handle, it gets stored in medical circles. They call it in adipose tissue, but that's fat.
That's fat.
So you can only, if you haven't been able to process all the calories you took in today, and then you start taking in more tomorrow, all those unprocessed calories from today get stored as fat, and your body will start trying to process the new ones. Now, as you said, you can only take maybe at the most 1,700 calories a day. The average is 2,000 for women and 2,500 for men. And again, I'm a short guy, so I don't need 2,500 calories.
You have to be very active to do it.
You have to be very accurate to your body weight and your height and all of that and figure it out. But even on an average, do you know how many times and how many places you can go in the world where you can get one meal that exceeds your daily allowance?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's everywhere.
My husband used to love to go to McDonald's, and I would be like, "Please, don't even take me there.
No,
don't even go there. What, are you kidding me? Because one meal is it. That's it. You're done.
Yeah, for the day.
For the day.
Probably over. If you ate 2 Big Macs, large fries, and a Coke, you're over.
You're done.
That's about 3,500 calories.
Yeah, you're done.
And nobody, I don't care who you are,
And now you haven't had any nutrition. You've basically just done carbs and protein, and that's it. There's no mineral. There's no. It's
No, and I read a statistic recently where the average American eats fast food 2 to 3 times a week. And fast food was never intended to be healthy. It was
meant to
intended
be
to be
fast.
fast. That's what it was intended. Now, if you look at the quality of the meats they're using, it's not really good. I mean, again, went through a medical program, so I learned all this biochemical stuff, and um, we like to promote beef as corn-fed beef. It's really tasty, but corn isn't really healthy for us. There's atom chains in your body that corn flips to a different version, and it's very unhealthy. Um, After 1989, I believe the practice was shifted to where what determines when you can bring a cow in for butchering is its weight. Okay, when they found out that corn fattens up a cow twice as fast as eating grass, which it's supposed to eat, they shifted over to feeding cows corn and then promoted corn-fed beef as being a wonderful thing. But corn, cows have to be forced to eat it. They don't like it. It's not good for them. It makes them sick. On those feedlots, beef
My
cows.
face, my facial expression. Sorry.
No, that's okay. On those feedlots, one of the regular things that happens is cows will just drop over dead. They don't really do autopsies on them. Prior to 1989, I think it was, they used to just grind the cow up and put it back in the meal and feed it to cows. Now you're feeding a sick animal to animals. Now, I think it was 89. I'm not sure of the date exactly, but there was a law put out by the FDA that says you can no longer feed dead cows to cows. But rather than stop feeding them to animals, they just shifted to feeding dead cows to pigs, feeding dead pigs to cows.
Oh, that's good.
Right. It didn't change anything.
And any good farmer would tell you, you know, any good cattle rancher or farmer knows that's not what to do.
That's not, but there's very few. The production lots are following those practices. Now, I like
Well, the
beef.
combines are buying up the farmland and the concept of animal husbandry. It's that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, no, that's not for, we shouldn't start that right now.
No.
But I do like beef. I like my meat. I try to eat, first of all, proteins take up to 2 days to process through your entire body. So again, getting back to that thing, if you can't process what you've eaten in an entire day, it'll shove it aside and start processing what you eat the next day. You really shouldn't eat proteins and meat more than once every 3 days. So you give that proteins and meat chance to process through your entire body before you give it more.
Mhm. And
Otherwise,
that's
it
sort
gets.
of what I've been doing intuitively. I think to myself, okay, tonight is going to be, you know, the cabbage and whatever night. I eat a lot of cabbage. Talk about being old fashioned. Um, and
Cabbage is good for you, though.
the other, you know, then I'll say to myself, oh, well, you know, is it time for protein? Like, oh yeah, did I have protein yesterday? No, I didn't. Okay, time for protein. And I just don't eat. I also I thought about this morning. I was like, why do I eat the carbohydrate in the morning? And I'm thinking, I think that's a good thing. So I
Yeah,
have porridge in the morning.
carbs in the morning, it gives you energy for your day.
I don't have carbs at night.
But carbs at night will get stored because, okay, this gets back into another, I'm going to reference Chinese philosophies a lot. Um, I had a Chinese instructor once tell me that you really shouldn't eat any solid food after 1 p.m.
Right. My last
because,
meal is at 3 o'clock,
and that's fine. You don't have to be exactly on 1 p.m.
but that my
But
last meal is at 3. Yeah.
we again have a balance of yin and yang energies. All of our yang energies, which are more exuberant, more powerful, are in the early days. That's digestive energies are in that group. So in the early hours of the day, you have energy for good digestion. In the second half of the day, you don't have good digestion energy. So you're not going to digest things as well in the late afternoon, evening as you would have in the early morning
Hmm.
or in the early part of the day. So always your big meals or your heavy carb meals should be earlier in the day. And if you're doing any eating after 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it should be very light.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you want to do protein shakes, you can get away with that kind of thing later because it's easy to digest.
Hmm.
But if we want to be healthy, shifting to where we're eating in the early hours of the day is a much smarter way to go because our bodies do get that energy for digestion.
Well, thank you. I now I know that this morning when I made that rule up in my head, no, I think I'm going to keep it that way because I thought maybe I'll switch and I'll start eating like like eggs or whatever in the morning. I'm like, no, something tells me to keep that porridge in the morning.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, you seem to be very much in tune. Like you said, we all know, and you know we know, so you're kind of in tune with that thought. So when you have thoughts, you kind of go with them. Now you just got to understand that we don't have to die when we're 90. We don't have to be decrepit and being pushed around by a family member. You just got to keep our bodies strong, keep our spirits strong, and keep our minds strong.
All right, everybody, I'm living till I'm 500. Get ready.
Yeah, I want to be there to see it.
I really appreciate you being with me. This has been an extraordinary session.
Well, I'm glad to have been here. I'm glad to help share things that you seem to enjoy. And I
Where
hope,
can people find you if they're looking for you?
oh, I have a website. It's in the middle of reconstruction because I'm presenting myself as a professional speaker and I do workshops and talks, but I also will be loading up video courses on some of the things I talked about on how to do meditations and all that. And it's monkwithoutthefunk.com. Um, yes, I am the monk without the funk. Um,
Certainly are.
yes. And in that regard, a lot of people ask me, what funk are you talking about? And I'm talking about, I don't have lethargic attitudes during the day. I don't have that drag where I got to have sugar during the day. I've got good, solid energy all through my day. I don't have the blues at all. I don't let things into my internalize that I can't have any control over. So no funk, the monk without the funk. It's monkwithoutthefunk.com. You can check there, and it might be in flux right now. The video courses were up, we pulled them down. We're going to put them back up. So just keep checking back, and I will be there.
I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to be taking some of those courses.
Awesome.
I promise.
I promise you they'll be good for you.
Well, thank you very much. That's a lovely relationship right there.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again and have a lovely day.
And you too. And thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Take care, everyone.